Changes in equilibrium. Here we are going to look at what happens if there's a change in the demand or the supply or both in the market. And as a result of these changes, the equilibrium will change, which means the price in the market and the quantity that people will buy and sell in the market will change. All right, here's an example of a market that is right now at equilibrium. Let's assume we are at A at equilibrium. And so the price in the market is $500 for this product, and the quantity that is being both sold and demanded is 100. Now imagine something happens in the market. Maybe the cost of production fall and the supply increases for this product. Okay. So what are the consequences of this? Now we have this new supply curve, and you can see that they no longer cross at A, but they cross over here. What this means is that now that the producers of this product are able to produce more for this greater quantity of product, people are no longer willing to pay the $500. And for a greater quantity, you can see that it has increased this way. The prices has to fall, otherwise we're not going to be at equilibrium. Another way of looking at this is saying that if we keep the price of $500 and we have now this new supply curve, well, at this price, this is what the producers would be willing to supply, 200 of this product. But at this price, according to the demand curve, this is how much people are willing to buy. So we would have a surplus in the market. So automatically the market will begin to adjust, and as the price falls in the market, people will start to buy less. Quantity demanded will as the price falls, quantity demanded will increase as people will start to buy more, and the quantity supplied will fall slightly until we get to this quantity, which is equilibrium quantity now at this new price of $250. Okay, so the result is that as you increase the supply of a product, the market will adjust by bringing the price down and increasing the quantity at equilibrium, which means the quantity that is both sold and produced. Here are what I call the basic changes. What happens when supply increases? This is just what we just described. So you can see that the new equilibrium at E2 has a lower price and a higher quantity. You can see here the summary. Demand staying the same. If supply goes up, quantity at equilibrium increases, the price at equilibrium falls. This is the opposite. If supply is falling, the equilibrium will go from E1 to E2, and you can see that the price at equilibrium is rising and the quantity at equilibrium is falling. On this side are the changes in demand. You can see here as the demand increases, the equilibrium goes from E1 to E2. You can see that the price is increasing and the quantity is also increasing. For this one, the demand is falling, and you can see equilibrium going from E1 to E2, price is falling, quantity is falling as well. A few tips to help you avoid some pitfalls in analyzing these changes in equilibrium. First, make sure you're identifying your market. Demand a supply of what? And it has to be the same product. You cannot be looking at a market with the demand for shoes and the supply of leather. It's not the same product. And this is something you need to pay attention to, because sometimes in your prompt there will be several products mentioned. So make sure you keep the supply and the demand for the same product. you start always with a sample equilibrium. So a certain demand, a supply, and a particular equilibrium. Oops, I did the wrong thing. All right. And you see what the changes are. So something will shift, the supply or the demand, or sometimes both. And you need to identify which is shifting. So pay attention to the factors of supply and demand. What shifts the demand, what shifts the supply. So for instance, supply is often related to cost of production. Demand might be related to income for the consumers. Make sure you shift it in the right direction. If it's to the left, it's a decrease. If it's to the right, it's an increase. And then you look at what happened to the price and the quantity at equilibrium. How did they change? Did the price increase? Did the quantity decrease? And I will give you your answer of the final change in the market. All right, another tip, something to remember. If the curve is shifting right, it's an increase. It's going towards higher quantities. If it's shifting to the left, it's a decrease. It's going towards zero, so lower quantities. Okay, and I know the critical one is the supply. So here's a supply, and here's another supply. The change from here to here is a decrease because it's going closer to zero. The quantities are moving closer to zero. It looks like it's going up, so students get confused. Another critical thing when it comes to these changes in equilibrium. Here, for instance, is an increase in supply. Let's say our cost of production has fallen, supply increasing. Right? Does that mean the demand changes? Not necessarily. Demand is affected by other things like income, nothing to do with cost of production. Just because the supplier is able to produce something cheaper doesn't mean you're going to want it more or less, right? It has to do with your income, your preferences, and these different factors that affect the consumer. So does that mean things change for you, the consumer? Yes, because if the supplier is producing more because they are able to reduce their cost of production, it means you can buy it now at a cheaper price. And we know that if the price of something falls, well, we're going to buy more. So this is a change in supply that leads to a new equilibrium with a lower price and a higher quantity at equilibrium, which means that it's a higher quantity demanded, which means people are buying more, and also supplied. People are supplying more, producers, and therefore consumers are able to buy more as well. A couple more tips. Okay. Don't think price right off the bat. That's the first thing students think about. This is your result, what happens to the price, not where it starts. So look at the source of the change. What's happening to the supply? What's happening to the demand? Only look at what's happening in the short term. Don't try to speculate. Limit yourself to the information that you're given and only think what's happening in the short term, immediately. All right, here's a quick example. Toyota is giving a $5,000 rebates on Camry models. And the question is, what is the impact on the market for the Honda Accord? All right, so what market are we talking about here? It's the Honda Accord, not the Camry, not Toyota, not cars in general, just for the Honda Accord. All right. Second, what's happening in this market for the Honda Accord? So you have the demand for the Hondas and the supply for the Hondas. When Toyota gives a rebate on Camry, what happens to the market? Well, is it something that comes from the supply of the cars or the demand from the consumer? Well, because the Camry is a substitute to the Honda Accord, it comes from the the consumers, right? The consumers want to buy, are going to buy less regardless of the possible price of the Accord, because there's that big rebate on the Camry. So the demand will decrease, it will therefore shift to the left. And what happens to my equilibrium? You can see that the prices would fall and the quantity would fall for the Honda Accord.